Excuse you. You're blessed. Yeah. Damn you. Damn me to hell. Fucking plebeian. Don't you dare. I dare you to call for you in. I'll choke you out myself. I'm dying. Kill me now. How we did? You good? All right. Burp. Yep. Well, welcome to the realm of Millenia. Be ye a man, a woman, a child, a spirit, a creature, or a demon. Be ye a native migrator, or maybe even an invader into the realm. Welcome, for I am your host, the Millenia Mailman, here today in a pajama boys. Gosh. On a pajama boys day for week 22 Devil's Advocate hot takes. Yes, the same hot take that men versus women debates and arguments are the fault of the good, supportive, protective men that gave the world and all those proper affirmations to the women in their lives properly. Didn't share the wealth, they just gave it to the people they were supposed to give it to. Because the jealous witches, of course, can't be blamed for them emotions that they can't control. Now can they? That being said, that is the hot take under the microscope of this discussion piece of why exactly we're blaming men, and of all the men to blame, we're blaming those good, supportive, protective men, right? And that first plot point of the four, and for this conversation, I came up with 4 plot points. Plot point number 1 basically removes all responsibility and blame from women. Jealous witches can't be blamed for those emotions out of control. Go to the Wednesday one for February 11th to see exactly that explanation. And then we have the also most of the explanation on the good men and what qualifies those humble peasantries and submissive ones, those good boys per se. Good boy. Those listening men, blame those. Then you have the supportives, and I made a few analogies to men as architecture, the structure, the support. And then there's also the Fix-It Felix or the Bob the Builders, rehabilitator type men's, and how those are considered supportive, not to be confused with the narcissistic personalities that go out of their way. A rehabilitator and fix-it man is all about being supportive in that they are there and available to assist you or fix your problems after you speak up. Closed mouth don't get fed. If you don't talk to them, those supportive men aren't going to do anything, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we can blame these supportive type men for the men versus women debates, because there's most certainly people out here complaining about the whole debates and arguments right now, and that's the trigger for the supportive men to come fix it and help out and rehabilitate the conversation, rehabilitate the debates and the arguments and the conversation on this at large. That's why we can blame them, right? And then the structural architecture guys were blaming those instead of the non-structures, because if you were a good architecture, if you were a good structure, this train wouldn't be derailed. If you was a good railroad, an actual structure and supportive through your duty and what you were made for and how you were structured and how you were built up, if you were a good one and properly supportive, you would have done your task right and the train wouldn't be derailed. So yeah, we're blaming you guys because those non-supportive types, those bums that can't fix and won't fix and can't do nothing, you can't blame them because they've been a bum and always been a bum. A bum just bumming. Bums living out the same life they do, right? So you gotta blame the supportive man, right? Because those bums coulda, woulda, shoulda, can't, because they ain't because they can't, right? You can't blame the ones who are incapable and incompetent. You gotta blame the competent and capable because only they could and should have done something, right? That being said, we get to today's conversation piece, which is targeting exactly why the protective men are at fault for these conversations continuing and never halting. And what qualifies as protective men? Those chivalrous men, those army military types, and the noble knights. And I'm not sure if you remember, but we did have a whole week on chivalrousness versus heroism and braveries. So, like the very first part of that conversation, when we bring up protective and chivalrousness, is the fact that part of that protective ability comes from your status and ability to be humble, right? Where we have to blame the chivalrous ones, the ones with enough status and authority to do something, even if they're not strong enough to, right? The rules in place for the chivalrous nature is what we gotta blame. The people who make the rules, the people with the status, titles, and ability to change the rules and fix it. You gotta blame them, because the people who can't change the rules, didn't make the rules, and do anything can't be blamed. Chivalrous natures and chivalry is only applicable to the people higher up. So in the aspect of protective men, those who make the rules and can designate and abide by the rules, you gotta blame those guys, right? Then you have the army military type, right? Where that is the enforcer of the very rules we're talking about, the one strong and capable enough to be protective, right? And that can kind of include the knights, but we did talk about the deceivers in here, which is those white knights, right? Everyone hates the white knights, right? Because white knights, while they sound good, it's very deceptive, right? Because the white knights aren't supportive because they do it wrong. They have the example of knights is that knights do their task. They do as they're told, right? Not to be confused with those good boys, the submissive types, but they have a job, they have duties, and they're protective. Knights do what they need to do and whatever else is needed and required of them. Not necessarily anything you want, right? Because there's a whole different structure for their demands and what they need to do. So knights may not always do what you want, but they certainly do what you need. And protection is under that branch of needs, right? Knights and army military types do what needs to be done. That's why you can always blame the military anytime something sucks in your life, because they do what needs to be done. But they're all terrible people. Yeah, sure, but they still did what needed to be done. Oh, they're not being open and forward and right with us. But did they or did they not do what needed to be done, right? That's always the rebuttal argument. The army, the military, the knights, they protect. They're there in existence for you. Knights generally protect just to higher nobilities, but the general military and militias, they're there for the people. Where, again, we make these analogies of knights. those knights, those real knights, do as is necessary, right? So we blame the knights for not being protective, despite being the protective types. Those knights that do what needs to be done, right? You gotta blame them. You gotta blame them for these issues because it needs to be done in order to protect the future. You gotta protect your partners. You gotta protect all the women from these problems. All those high quality, high maintenance, they are in need of the protection, knights. What is wrong with you? They're queens. How dare you not protect the queens, right? These out of hand, out of control men versus women debates and arguments are the fault of you good, supportive, and protective knights out here who should have been covering your bases, man. You should be on their bases, and the only thing you guys are doing is giving the world and affirmations to the particular women in your life. What the heck, man? What about the rest of us? You have a duty to protect and support, and you're just hunkering down on the few. Man, so mean, so cruel of you knights, right? And people will get confused and interlace the idea of the white knights, because the white knights, yes, they go above and beyond, but the worst thing about white knights, which you have to separate from regular knights, is the fact that white knights tend to always do it wrong, right? The white knights will go out of their way. The white knights, much like a narcissistic personality, is going to do what they think is right for you. They're not doing it because you said anything. They're like, I know what you need and I will fix it. That's a white knight, right? So they are still being protective, which is why it falls under protective. And I still use the knight name, but it's a difference. Knights do what you need and don't always do what you want, right? But the difference between a normal knight and a white knight will always try to do what you want and fall short of your needs often, right? The white knight will always do what they believe that you want, and it tends to be nothing you actually want them to do, which is why white knight is always a negative connotation. When to be like, what are you white knighting over here for? Shut up, leave us alone, right? What are you white knighting over here for? You can't talk to her like that, bro. She nearly killed herself. She nearly got everyone in the bar dead because she doesn't understand how the propane tank works. Yeah, I'm gonna be stern. What do you? Yeah, but you can't, bro. White knight. That's a white knight scenario. White knight's gonna go out of their way to help fix anything and everything for you, even if you don't want it. They're being real protective and extreme. Yeah, bro, you can't do that. Dude, this is my wife and this is how we talk to each other. Don't do that. Do you want him to talk for you? No, I don't like him. I don't know who he is. He's making me scared. He's creepy. He's weird. Oh my God, just stop talking to her like that, bro. Dude, stop white knighting and get the hell out of my face. Right? White knights tend to do anything and everything about it wrong, because the whole idea of knight is they do what you need and not always what you want. But the biggest problem that diversifies the white knight from a regular knight is the fact that they do effectively what they want to do, which isn't always which is rarely what you need and hardly ever anything you actually want them. Bro. Right? But that's enough on that before I digress. But so we covered knights thoroughly. We reviewed what chivalry is, and then back to the military army type, right? Those are your hard asses, right? they're staunch proprietors of being protective and being that support. The Army military types are very regularly and very openly hated, but you gotta respect them. So, though we can all, a good 80 to 90% of us can agree, violence is never okay until it's necessary, right? Right? Well, this Army military type is going to be under this category. The ones who are capable and competent with that utilization of it. No, I need to do this right now, so I'm going to chin check this man and put him in the ground. Right? That Army military type is a capable person, right? And they will use force as necessary. And because of that intimidation factor that they exude, because they are a military Army type protector, they can be very off-putting at times. They need to be, and it's hard for a lot of military to hone that in or get it under control. But you can tell apart in a lineup of military dudes who is capable and competent versus those who are less competent and those who are less capable than others. You can look at them and tell. You can watch them for a couple minutes and see how they get along, how they're doing this, how they're doing that. But by far and large, because they are a military or any branch of the armies and branch of the military, they will get a natural amount of hate as being a capable, violent aesthetic, right? It's like, I can't believe you. I don't date military dudes. Oh, I don't do this. Because the very title associated with it is violent and unacceptable. You're entitled to that opinion. That's not always true. There are military medics who don't participate in any of the violence and exclusively healing, but yeah. And as a medic, I have the same strength standard as everyone else, right? I am capable of doing violence, I just choose not to. I am competent and capable, but I don't participate. But so, yeah, there's that aspect of the protective military type man. They are capable of stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean they do it, but they are capable because they are protective and need to be capable in order to fix things. And how they use it is up to how the situation that calls for it or doesn't call for it. Then the final review of the chivalry and chivalrous. You gotta blame the chivalrous people because they are of the proper status and capability to make rules and change and influence them. You gotta blame the chivalrous people for not chivalrous men for these men versus women debates getting out of hand and existing too long, because they're the ones, those chivalrous ones, choosing to be humble out here instead of being forceful as we need them to be. You're being humble. And that's why you got the title of chivalry. But I don't want you to be humble right now. I need you to do something. In the same vein as the Army military types, you're being protective and all that, cool, but you didn't actually protect us from the negative effects of these men versus women debates by shutting stuff down when you needed to, right? It's going beyond that. So it's your fault that these men versus women debates are out of hand. It's your fault that these stuff is ruining the whole scene and the whole atmosphere for everyone, because you were capable and you didn't follow through with the finishing of it. You didn't follow through for the rest of us, and now the rest of us are hurt, and the only ones who are content and happy with their lives in this world are those women in your lives who got all the world and the affirmations from you, because you let the rest of us fall by the wayside and die unhappy, which is why we're mad and why our emotions are out of hand and out of control. It's your fault, man. It's your fault. Yeah. You can't blame those jealous witches whose emotion came out of control because they can't control it. It's your fault. And it's your fault they can't be in control. All you good, supportive, protective men, it's your fault. Because the jealous witches, of course, can't be at fault. None of the women can be at fault. Right? And I didn't mention it here, and I don't have it as a note, but when I was thinking about the conversation, there is the honorable mention that the reason the men are at fault is because there is that also alternative stigma that men listen to men more often than they listen to women, right? So under that specific stigma, you can't really blame women for the men not hearing them out, because there is that aspect of being, not only being a role model, but also being that mentor for your fellow man, right? I don't remember if I mentioned it on any of the days, but I will make sure I say it before closing out this week's hot take. It's that aspect of, not that two-pronged aspect of being a role model, being an example that people look up to, and then there's that aspect of actually being that mentor who reassures and shores up that people actually follow through and follow up and shore up the promised capability and competence in the next generation, or there's that expansion of good, supportive, protective and men. So long as those good, supportive, protective men are just good, supportive, and protective, and it dies, that ideology dies with them, it means absolutely nothing. Because that select group of good, supportive, protective men didn't continue on. It died out with them. So you gotta blame the good, supportive, protective men for being decent role models, but not good enough mentors. You gotta blame the good, supportive, protective men for not mentoring the next batch or next generation of expanding good, supportive, protective men. We blame the good, supportive, protective men because only those good, supportive, protective, competent, capable men could have ever built the next generation of good, supportive, protective men. You can't blame the women because the women aren't men. And even if the women were competent and capable, the likelihood that they'd be listened to by those not so good, not so supportive, not so protective men and how to change themselves, it plummets because of the stigma and stereotype that men listen to men. Right? So, who is to blame? Since even if the women did have good ideas and good opinions and good structure, who's to blame? If even the women who have all in the words and recommendations aren't being listened to, well, it would be the men's fault for not repeating it, regurgitating it out the way it needed to be, and making sure it stays up there in the atmosphere until something happens. It's the good, supportive, and protective men's fault as to why there isn't a larger populace and growing generation after generation of fellow good, supportive, protective men. But that's just the honorable mention. That isn't on the page. Yep, that's all the plot points for this Devil's Advocate Week 22 hot take. Yep, so we got our Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday videos now completed. And as always, go ahead and leave a like on the video if you like anything I had to say. Put your comment section down below. Your questions, comments, concerns, and stuff. I will address it on a Monday. After I see your comments on the videos, I will address them on a Monday. And by all means, share the video for more exposure and subscribe to the channel. If you feel like it, of course, I take those subscriptions as a number of people who would like me to finish the book. I don't take it as anything to mean anything about the channel itself. I take subscriptions as people who enjoy what I have to say and want me to finish my book, because this channel was made for the book, not for a YouTube channel just to be a YouTube channel. It was made to garnish hype for my book, The Realm of Millenia, which is why I do the intro as such. Welcome to the realm, because the realm is all about the book and stuff I put in the book, to include all of these hot takes. Some of these hot takes are hot takes and opinions of characters, but by and large, every last one of the hot takes that you hear first came from stuff I've seen in videos, Twitter, TikTok. All of these come from other people. They're not my hot takes and opinions. They're just hot takes and opinions that I feel like I can debate that. I can talk on that because I'm a competent person who's capable of discussion, right? But here nor there. That's just me, the devil. No. That's just me, your Millenia mailman, speaking for the devil's advocate. And I'll be pumping out videos faster than the gears can turn that way. Who knows? Till next time. Peace.